Good evening, everyone. Tonight we're going to be discussing parallel lines and angles. Parallel lines are lines that do not intersect and are coplanar. It's important to note that they are coplanar. There's a few ways of marking parallel lines. One way is you'll see colored in triangles pointing in the same directions, or you also may see arrows in the middle of the lines pointing in the same direction. That tells you that line A is parallel to line B. Skew lines are lines that do not intersect and are not coplanar. So if you look at the picture, this is a cube, and we have a line on the top surface and a line on the front surface. So if you imagine maybe like your desk, this would be like a pencil, and this would be the leg of your desk. They're on different planes, and so they would never intersect, so we call them skew lines. Now let's discuss something called the parallel postulate. The parallel postulate says that there is exactly one line through point P that is parallel to line L. So that means that there's only one possibility. I couldn't draw other lines through point P that would never intersect L. There's only one option. And from that we get the perpendicular postulate, which says there is exactly one line through point P that is perpendicular to line L. So the same as only one parallel line, there's only one option for perpendicular line. Now, a new vocabulary word we're learning is something called a transversal. A transversal is a line that intersects two or more lines. So in the picture here, this pink line that hits both of our black lines is a transversal. And with transversals, we have a lot of new angle relationships. The first relationship we're going to discuss is corresponding angles. Corresponding angles are angles that are on the same side of the transversal and in the same position at the intersection. So for example, let's look at number 1 and 5. Number 1 is to the left of the transversal and above the top line. Number 5 is also to the left of the transversal and above the line that it's touching. So they're both left and above. That's why they're corresponding. 4 and 8, similarly, are both to the right and below the line in the intersection they're next to. Now, if you have a highlighter, it can make these easier to spot, because if I take my highlighter and highlight the two lines I used to make angle 4 and highlight the two angles I used to make angle 8, then I see that it makes an F. Now, this F could be upside down or facing backwards or up or left, but if you rotated your picture, you would eventually be able to see the F. Next, we have alternate interior angles. These are angles that are on opposite sides of the transversal and between the lines. And if you think about the way these are named, alternate matches with opposite, so alternate sides, opposite sides, and then interior matches with between. Interior is the same thing as between. So when we think about alternate interior angles, they are opposite and between. So if we look at 3 and 6, 3 is on the left, 6 is on the right, and then they are between the two lines crossing my transversal. And again, if we pull out our highlighter, we can highlight the two lines used to make angle 3 and the two lines used to make angle 6, and we see that we have a Z. So if you highlight the lines used to create these two angles, you'll find that you have a Z. Your Z could also be backwards, as it would be if we had highlighted the lines making angle 4 and angle 5. Alternate exterior angles are angles that are on opposite sides of the transversal and outside the lines. Again, if you think about what it's saying, alternate matches up with opposite, and exterior matches up with outside. So alternate exterior angles are the same thing as opposite outside angles. If we look at angles 1 and 8, 1 is on the left side, 8 is on the right side, and they are outside of the two lines that are touching the transversal. Same thing with 2 and 7, on opposite sides, and they are outside of our two lines. Unfortunately, there is no cute highlighter trick for alternate exterior angles. And last, we have consecutive interior angles, which can also be called same-side interior angles. These angles are on the same side of the transversal and between the two lines. So if we look at angle 3 and angle 5, they are both on the left side and between the lines, and then 4 and 6 are both on the right side and between the lines. If we use our highlighter trick to highlight the pieces we need to make the angles, I can highlight these two for 4 and these two for 6. We see that we have a C. It may also look like an N or a U depending on how your paper is turned, but these two are both inside the C together. When we introduce parallel lines to the angle relationships we've just discussed, we get 4 very useful postulates. Each of these postulates will begin in the exact same way. If 2 parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then. In this case, if 2 parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the corresponding angles are congruent to each other. So that means angle 1 and angle 5 are equal, so you see they have the congruency marks. Angle 2 and angle 6 are equal or congruent. 3 and 7 are congruent, and 4 and 8 are congruent. So this is very useful when solving problems. Next, we have the alternate interior angles postulate, which again starts that if 2 parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then alternate interior angles are congruent. So that means angle 3 and angle 6 are congruent to each other, and angle 5 and angle 4 are congruent to each other. Now, alternate exterior angles postulate starts that if 2 parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then the alternate exterior angles are going to be congruent. So 1 will be congruent to 8, and angle 7 will be congruent to angle 2. And last, consecutive interior angles postulate says that if 2 parallel lines are cut by a transversal, then consecutive interior angles are supplementary. It's very important since this one is different from the other 3, bringing in the supplementary angles that you remember that consecutive interior are supplementary. So that means angle 3 plus angle 5 is going to equal 180, and angle 4 plus angle 6 is going to equal 180 degrees. Now, let's identify all the angles in this picture that are equal to 120 degrees and then state why we think that. So please pause the video and try to see if you can name all the angles equal to 120 degrees and why. Hopefully angle 4 is one of the angles that you saw that will be equal to 120 degrees. And we know that angle 4 is equal to 180 degrees because 4 and 120 are vertical angles. Another angle that equals 120 degrees is angle 5. Angle 5 and 120 degrees are corresponding angles because they are both above the transversal and to the left of the parallel lines. And the last angle that equals 120 degrees is angle 8 because angle 8 and the 120 degrees are alternate exterior angles because they are on opposite sides of the transversal and outside of the parallel lines. Now let's try this example. Find x. Look at the picture, pause the video, and see if you can find x on your own. Hopefully you notice that angle 4 is the vertical angle of 115 degrees, so that means the measure of angle 4 is equal to 115 degrees. Next, if I pick up my highlighter and highlight the 2 lines used to make angle 4 and the 2 lines used to make angle x plus 5 degrees, then I see I've made a C. If I remember the rules that we just talked about, a C means consecutive interior angles, and we know that those 2 angles are supplementary. So that means I can say 115 plus x plus 5 equals 180 degrees. Now I just need to solve for x. First, I'm going to combine my like terms. 115 plus 5 is equal to 120, plus x equals 180. Next, I need to subtract 120 from both sides, and then I find that x is equal to 60, and that is our answer. We do not write 60 degrees because if you notice, the x is inside the parentheses and the degrees on the outside, so x is not the degree. It's just an answer, just a number. So the answer is x equals 60. If you have the printout notes, this is the very last problem in your notes. Go ahead and give it a try and see if you can do it. You're going to do it in class with your teacher next time you see them. So if you are not using the printout notes, please copy this into your notes so that you are ready in class. And that's everything I have for you. See you next time.